Well, everybody, it is Wednesday, April 9th, the year of 2025. This is episode number 199 of Material Issues. And yes, it is the final scheduled Wednesday program until we start our new Sunday evening time slot. I'm Mark Hershberger of Pop Detective Records. Joining me as always, he's over on the left coast. Some say the best coast. I'm not sure about that. But super sunny Southern California, the president of the International Pop Overthrow Festival, my good friend, Mr. David Bash. Good afternoon, David.
Good to see you, Mark.
Yeah, great to see
Finally,
you.
we've had some good weather again. And they were talking about a heat wave, but I don't think it's quite going to be that bad. But it's high 80s, which
Wow.
is not bad for this time of year. Not windy, and that's actually important for me. I think last week I mentioned that I was going to have some record shelves built.
Mhm.
Well, Eric Scotus, who's actually was the drummer for Imperial Drag, he does a lot. Hey Rick, good to see
Rick.
you. He does work in that area, and he's been working on this it's now about a week. I mean, obviously not straight. He comes over and then goes home, but it's taken a while. But I have a feeling they're going to be really good quality. So
Nice.
I can't wait till they're in. Probably maybe by Sunday they'll be in. It might be a little after that, but we'll see. I really need it. Let's put it that way. I got stuff all over the floor.
You're running out of space.
Running out of space, and one of the shelves is actually going in the corner of the record room where I had a couple of pictures hanging. So I took the pictures down, and one of them is now up on the wall. You might be able to see it here in the office. It's Jellyfish Spilt Milk. I got that one framed. I don't even remember when. I know that it fell one time, and so the glass is a little bit cracked, but that's okay. The poster looks wonderful. So that's now part of my office. Let's see what else. Of course, our biggest condolences to the family of Clem Burke and all his friends.
Yeah.
We lost a great one. Clem had played IPO a few times with the Tearaways and a few other bands. I didn't really speak with him too much, but I do remember our interactions were fine. Hi, Tim.
Hey, Tim.
And he was loved by many. He certainly influenced a hell of a lot of drummers. I know John Borak cites him as one of his major influences. Probably has him in his top 5 all-time drummers. And I'm sure you could find a lot of other people who feel the same way. So, R.I.P., sir.
Yeah, sure. super nice guy. I had the pleasure of talking with him a number of times. He was a very big supporter and fan of the Jelly Bricks, and came out to shows and things. And super nice guy. Very, very humble guy to talk with. But and I told you the other day I talked with Rocky Burnett, who was on our show, and he's in hospice now, and he's not doing very well at all. So we send our prayers out to Rocky. That hopefully his road here is not that rocky.
Hopefully his final days, whenever they are
but he's just tired of towing the line.
I suppose he is. All right. So here's something I just got in the mail today. It's Omnivore. It's on Omnivore. It is the first ever vinyl issue of the Czar, the debut Czar album from 2000. Nice. As we all remember, Jeff Whalen, lead singer of Czar, was one of our first guests. And you didn't even you asked him one question, and then the hour was up. That guy just talked and talked and talked. But what he was saying was really cool. And here's Steve Coulter, drummer of Czar, who we've had as a guest as well. Obviously a really great power pop album. Songs like Kathy Fong is the bomb. I think they made it onto some TV soundtracks and stuff like that. So thank you, Omnivore. I think this is coming out in a couple of weeks. But here it is. White vinyl, by the way.
Nice.
If you're into that sort of thing. I'm looking. So look forward to that, and always support Omnivore. They're the greatest.
Great labels. Yeah.
Great labels, great people. IPO wise, sent out the. I think I told you this, but if I haven't, sent out the Stockholm schedule. Tom Hell is in.
Oh, did you? I know you got in touch with him, but I didn't know for a fact that he said yes.
He
Wow.
is in. He
Nice.
is in for Sunday, June 8th at Encore.
Very
And,
nice.
He's bringing a couple of band members with him. So
Wow.
obviously, Mark, I have to thank you so much for getting him on the show, and it gave me the opportunity to hear his music, to get to know him, and now he'll be playing IPO. So
there you go, 3-time Grammy Award winner.
Yeah,
not bad.
So very much looking forward to that. Just sent out a few IPO CD invitations. Have gotten a decent response so far. Not everyone has received it yet.
Mm-hmm.
I always start with the cities most in the past that played since the last release. So I started with the East Coast cities, and I sent one out to Chicago, and Liverpool and Stockholm are coming up, and then LA and so on. So I'm excited about that as well. All right, well, it's time to bring on our guest, and this is certainly
we have a guest tonight as well.
Yeah, this is a surprise too.
Awesome.
It's Mr. and Mrs. Hell, Tom's parents.
This show keeps going to hell, I know.
It really does. Anyway, he's certainly an esteemed gentleman of the pop scene, power pop for sure. Originally from Poland, but got to hear some great music of the 60s back there. It was a bit of a challenge. We'll talk about that, but he did. Moved to New York, formed a band called the Poppies, which were everything that their name would suggest. Very Mersey beat, some great stuff. If She Cried was a single on Bomp Records back in the day, and it was wonderful. Still is wonderful. So there was that. Then after the Poppies disbanded, he formed the band Sorrows, who got 2 albums released on CBS. But as the story goes, it didn't work out the way the band wanted, and of course that happens with major label bands all the time. But yeah, and it was pretty sorrowful for them when they were associated with that label. And the producer they worked with. We'll talk about that. After that, he kind of left the music business for a bit, but then came back to it. Got signed to Big Stir Records. We have released several albums, some under his own name and some under Sorrows. He was able to keep the masters, and he re-recorded the album. Well, the band re-recorded the album exactly the way they would have wanted it back in the day, and they sound way better. And recently released on Big Stir is what would have been a planned 3rd album on Columbia, but didn't happen. But fortunately, the tracks did. Parting is Such Sweet Sorrow. Get it? I have to ask what venue that is. I don't think it's
gotta be CBGB's, right?
Yeah. Probably. You know what? I've never been in CBGB's. I never was there, even though I went to New York University and it was like right around the corner. And back then my attitude was always, if I have extra money, it's going to records.
Yeah.
And I missed out on that club. But anyway, this is a great record. I mean,
sure is. Yeah.
It's certainly up there with the first 2 as they were re-recorded. And but no surprise, this guy is a power pop genius. So without further ado, would you please give a huge Material Issues welcome to the man who says, "Don't tell me to turn it down. I only know how to turn it up," Mr. Arthur Alexander.
Thank you.
There he is.
And I've seen that happen. Hi, Arthur. I've seen you turn it up a few times at shows. So.
Oh yeah.
Indeed.
I have a quick question. Are we being seen or just heard by whoever's listening?
Seen and heard.
Oh, this is video, audio.
Okay.
Deep into the psychological.
Go to YouTube, go to Facebook, and will be archived as soon as the show's over. It'll be archived.
Just want to make sure my bra is okay.
Yeah. Your bra looks good. Don't pick your nose or your ears. It's all live on video. So
How
it
does
looks
my
good.
Motley shirt work? Look.
I got Danceteria. New
Yeah,
York.
yeah, that's one of the places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Danceteria.
Wow.
That's
There you go.
that rings a bell from the back way when.
Way back when, yeah. Yeah, that was back in the day.
So,
Indeed.
Mark, ask the question that is on everybody's mind.
What's that?
Or at least on your mind.
Oh, my man.
Yeah.
Arthur, I don't know what your original last name was, but you changed your name to Arthur Alexander. Did you think about the original soul singer that sang Anna that the Beatles covered being as Arthur Alexander?
Not in the least. It just so happens that I just decided to have a name that people could in this country could actually pronounce, and and my middle name is Alexander.
Oh, okay, well that works.
So I didn't want to kind of like disappoint my parents, that I abandoned the family. So I kept that name, and I just decided, since I'm going to be the next Elvis, I should have like a name that people can actually remember. So I took that name, and it just kind of stuck, and it just came a point where most people knew me as Arthur Alexander than anything else. So I just changed it legally, and it's been like this ever since. Now, needless to say, I was aware of Arthur Alexander, from way back when. I saw his name on the Beatles records, on Jerry and the Pacemakers, and
Yeah.
I never kind of like put the two and two together, like, oh, that's kind of like my name, it just. But ever since then, yeah, if I had a dollar for everyone who asked me if I'm the guy who wrote Anna, go to him, you would have to talk to my people, my people to your people to be able, to talk.
Well,
to
if you had actually written that song.
Oh yeah.
People. Yeah.
I think it's funny. I would have just said yes, that's me.
Well, I usually say, unfortunately, I'm not, because if I were, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah, that is true.
No,
Yeah, you'd probably be long since dead too.
Yeah, he's just he's my distant cousin from another mother.
Yeah.
So you were raised in Warsaw.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Warsaw.
If I remember my history classes from back in the early 70s, it was under Soviet rule, which back then, which probably means that whatever you could listen to on the radio was being very heavily controlled and squashed.
Of course.
So how did you end up? I assume you were able to hear the Beatles and stuff, but how did that happen?
Well, how did that happen? I mean, no matter how tightly they controlled everything and everything else, there was always ways to get stuff, through black market. Some people did travel to the West, to the Western European countries, and would bring records with them, for their kids or what have you. And two other major sources were, number one was Radio Free Europe, which I think at this point, I think they actually Radio Free Europe, I think, was under the auspices of Voice of America. And after the fall of the Soviet Union and everything, and the whole bloc, the Soviet bloc, I think at some point in time it was closed. But Radio Free Europe would broadcast specifically for that reason, all the Western records and stuff like that. And then the other source was there was a thing called Radio Luxembourg, which obviously was the major, even for the British kids, it was the major source of rock and roll for them, because in England it was then tightly controlled by BBC. So Radio Luxembourg was a big one, and of course all that stuff was being jammed by the Russians from East Germany. So as kids with our crystal radios, we would just kind of sit there listening to the static, and you would hear the song, and then a few minutes into it, the whole thing would fade out into a noise and crackle, and then it would come back. We would not give up, we would just.
And and even though that was difficult times, in so to speak, the memory of that and the thrill of hearing things has got to just be wonderful in your heart, as far as
Oh,
like,
you have no idea. You have no idea. You know, I've always had this kind of a semi funny way of presenting it, but I knew that there'll come a time where all that stuff that was going on there is going to cave, and what's going to do it is rock and roll,
mm,
because you could not stop rock and roll with bayonets and tanks. Okay,
yeah,
you just can't do it, and we were, the youth was just so enamored and so much into it. To us it represented so much more than to you guys here. To you guys it was just music. To us it represented freedom.
yeah, wow,
And that feeling, you just can't fight it, because we would always find a way, whether it was records or whether it was the equipment. I was in the band already before I left. We were singing all those songs that we heard, through the crackle and noise. We had no records really to speak of. We had, I don't know if I've seen this when I came here, like, I don't know if you remember them in magazines. They would have these like plastic inserts, like that. They look like postcards with the records engraved into
oh
them.
yeah, yeah.
Like
They're
I
like
think
little flexi discs or
like
whatever
a
they used to
flexi,
call
yeah,
them.
yeah.
Yeah,
And you could tear it away from the magazine and play. Well, that was my record collection. You would
they
go to
Wow.
you would go
Arthur, they
to
used to have those on the back of cereal boxes too, where you would
yeah,
cut
right.
you would
Well, we
cut
didn't
the
we
cardboard
didn't
out.
yeah. Well, we didn't have cereal. We didn't have cereal, so we didn't have cereal boxes. But
Wow.
but you would go to like a newsstand, and you had a rack of postcards, with the pictures of this and pictures of that, and those were being used. I mean, you had postcards, and next to it was a whole rack of various postcards with flowers, with pictures, with the records on it. That was, I remember the first time I heard Lucille and Little Richard was on
Wow.
a postcard. That's how we listen to the music.
See,
So
this is really important because, here, of course, there was so much hype involved with, first original rock and roll in the 50s, and then of course the British invasion. You didn't have that hype in Poland, but yet you heard the songs and you just knew that it was
we, you
great
know
stuff.
we didn't know what was what. We just knew we loved what we heard, and it
Yeah.
just represented something. Well, to start with, it was a forbidden fruit. Okay, that was good enough. Okay, and we just loved what we heard, and needless to say, we started playing this. I didn't understand what the hell they were saying, so everything was done phonetically. We sang all these songs, and people just loved it. There was just no stopping it. There was just no stopping it.
But you
So
know what, though, Arthur? I read in an interview that you did that you and your band would play some protest songs like Dylan and other things. And one day you were doing a gig, and suddenly some people, aka maybe the military, came in and said, "No, this show is over." And that was your big impetus to come to this country. Is that
yeah,
right?
well, yeah. What happened was, I was, I had my band, like I said, and we were playing all these rock songs that we were getting from left and right, and I was already studying English. I was in my high school, and I've always loved the language to begin with. So I was studying it, and then this girl's father came from, I think he went somewhere, came from France, and just brought Blonde and Blonde, Dylan's album, and she had a couple of other ones, and I was just so taken by that particular album. I was just mesmerized, and then somehow I found out that there were a lot of songs that were what they call the protest songs against the government and this and that. Well, that was it. I didn't need much encouragement, so I decided I was going to sing these songs phonetically. But at the same time, it really gave me an impetus because I really wanted to understand what this guy is saying, as opposed to just mouthing, what I thought the words were.
Right.
So I really started studying English and trying to understand what he's saying. And we incorporated several songs into our repertoire. And our friends knew why we were doing it, because that was basically, saying fuck you to the government,
Right.
in our way. Well, apparently somebody snitched on us, and the government didn't like very much that idea. So it was not a gig, actually. It was a rehearsal.
Ah,
But yeah, we were rehearsing. I would sing like Maggie's Farm, Subterranean Homesick Blues, Love Minus Zero, like all different songs. Yeah, and we were rehearsing, and all of a sudden, these like two or three guys in a trench coat showed up, and basically beat the shit out of us, destroyed our
whoa.
equipment, and saying no more of this, and left.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
That's it.
That's
So
powerful. That's
to
crazy.
all of you listening out there, think about what I'm saying, because that's what's happening here.
Amazing.
Yeah, it is,
I
it
don't
is
want to get too
frightening.
political. I don't know if you guys want to stay away from that, but I think that in this context, that I thought it would
No,
it
no,
would
you're right. It's scary. Yeah.
it needed to be said.
Yeah,
Well,
So
I've
yeah,
seen you say it on Facebook enough times, so I know
yeah.
I know how you
So
feel.
so yeah, when I say I look at what's happening here, and when I say I lived it, I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you ended up coming to New York around 1969,
yeah.
1970, and
69.
obviously that was a pivotal time for music, but
I
also a
came I
pivotal
came
time in
here
the world.
I came here just in time to be drafted to go to Vietnam.
Oh, Jesus.
So you actually went?
Oh hell no, no! But I got a draft notice.
So
So
what
I went.
happened?
So I went to Fort. What was it called? Not Fort Knox. Fort.
Fort Dix.
Dicks. Yeah.
No, there was Fort something in Brooklyn. There was a
Oh,
in
Ah,
Brooklyn, New York. Fort
okay.
Hamilton.
Maybe.
Some
maybe. Yeah.
some Fort something. For the draft whatever examination or something. And I like put it in an Oscar-winning performance. I couldn't understand a word of English. I didn't know what they were saying to me. I don't know what the hell I did, but long story short, I got a deferment for 1 year because I didn't speak English. Of course, I did by then, but like I said, I made a real good show of it, and I was like number 18 on the lottery
Holy cow.
at that time. So they gave me a deferment for 1 year, and by the time that year came about, I think they stopped the whole lottery system. So I was kind
Yeah.
of like in a clear.
Wow, boy, were you ever.
Yeah. Well, no, that wasn't going to happen. I didn't come here to go.
Go there.
Right.
I didn't come here to be sent there for the cannon father.
Of course.
Yeah,
So what
so
was the music scene like in New York for you at that time?
well, there was no music scene. There was no music scene really to speak of. I mean, at least I was not a part. No, no. I think it's safe to say there was not really a music scene the way we think of, like when you think about what happened a few years later with the whole punk new wave scene. There was pretty much nothing. The only thing that really happened of any significance to me, at least, is accidentally being at Woodstock.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that was quite a memory that
Accidentally.
actually I say accidentally, because what had happened was I had this friend who lived in the same building where I was, and he knew that I was alone, and he had either had or rented this bungalow upstate, and say, "Hey Arthur, I'm going upstate for the weekend. Do you want to go with me?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. Why not?" So, oh, and he had a car. That was a big thing. So he
Mhm.
took me there, and we're driving. And once we got into that area, which I didn't know what it was, all of a sudden I see these crowds and like thousands of people just walking out, walking the street, walking the road, and all these cars parked on the side of the road. And I stuck my head out, and I asked what's going on, and they said there's a free rock concert up ahead. So I said to my friend, "See you on Monday." Jumped out of the car and I started walking with these people. I had no idea what was going on, or what it was going to turn into. So I got there, and there was like, I don't know, 500,000 people there already. I was like at the tail
Mhm.
end, so the stage looked like a little tiny speck of something in front of me. It took me 3 days, but by the end of the 3 days, I was right by the stage,
Wow.
and
So
it was incredible.
you just
It
kind
was
of
incredible.
snuck up slowly and got
Yeah,
there.
just kind of making my way while people were either tripping or sleeping or whatever.
Right.
I would like trample over them.
It got easier as the days went by because they were
Right,
getting more and more
right, right.
stoned.
Well,
Yeah.
then the rains came and the mud and everything else, so yeah.
Amazing.
But that
Oh, what a
that,
story.
that, that was my scene. No,
Do you
nothing really happened until later.
do you have any impressions of any of the acts that you saw?
Oh, several. The Who, or by the time the Who came on, I was like literally, I could touch them just about.
Wow.
Yeah, I was very close. They were incredible. For some reason, I still remember. I think he was actually the first act. Just as I got there, was Richie Havens, right? Just by himself with his guitar. He was great. I mean, it was so much. Sly and the Family Stone. I think Janis Joplin was there. Um, but for some reason, the Who really kind of stuck in my mind. Maybe it's
Sure.
because by then I was like so close.
Yeah.
And I've always liked them. I think they did. This was around Tommy. They were
Yes.
touring the states around Tommy issue. So yeah, that was an unforgettable experience. Oh, 10 years after,
Mm.
with
Sure.
that famous
Yep.
version of Going Home, and
Yep.
seeing
Amazing.
it live was quite something. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
So how soon after you get to New York do you form a band, and which band was it?
Well, it was around 73, I think. I actually didn't form the band. I actually responded to an ad in the Village Voice,
Ah.
which is how we did things back then.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Remember, there's no internet, no nothing. So Village Voice had a section, like wanted ads, and part of that section was musicians looking for musicians and otherwise. And I did partake in a couple of other bands before that, but they were like nothing really was sticking. Some of them were like cover bands, and I was really not interested in that. And then I saw this ad, and it said the band looking for some, for a guitarist or lead guitarist, much like the Beatles. Well, that would be me. Yes. So I called them up. It was Bobby and Patty, and they were starting this band called the Poppies. So I went to audition for them, and I'm listening to their songs, and I was really floored and like really surprised because they were really great songs, and what I particularly liked about it, even though it was very uh, formulaic in the sense that it was definitely very Mersey beat. The whole idea at the time for the Puppies was their whole concept of the band is they wanted to create something that literally sounded like the Beatles up to the second album and not a song later,
Mm.
Right.
which
Yeah.
is which was fine because I loved both. I loved that sound, and their songs reflected it. You know, they really sounded like that period. But what was really cool about them is that they were really great songs. Yeah, you could say that this one sounded like All My Loving played backwards, but as a song, it was a great song that could stand on its own 2 feet. It was not just you know how they say the flattery is the sincere. What was that saying?
Yeah.
Uh,
Sincerest form of compliment is
right,
is
flattery is the
imitation. Imitation.
imitation is the
Imitation of sincere form flattery. Yeah.
Yeah.
right. You could say that, and it certainly was, but they were damn good at it. They really sung well. The songs were great. So I said, yeah, I'm in, and I became
Yeah,
the
it's great. It's good that you bring that up because it's always been a big pet peeve with me when journalists will journalists who are cool will put down things that aren't original without even listening to the song. It's like be, beyond anything else, the song and how good it is more important than whether it's original or anything else.
yeah, and it really, to me, it really doesn't, it doesn't matter, if it's reminiscent of this, reminiscent of that. It's like, it's funny you should say that, because I often reflect on this. I remember back then when you would read the reviews of the records and stuff, the journalists would talk about the music that they're listening to. You never heard back then somebody reviewing the Beatles records and it's, oh, this sounds like Everly Brothers and this sounds like
Right.
Atkins and this sound. Who gives a fuck? You know,
Right.
Totally.
how does it sound when you listen to it? Do
Right.
you like it? Is it good? Do you
Yeah.
have fun listening to it? Now it seems like every review that I read, us or anybody else, for some reason there's this compulsion to constantly draw references to something and somebody else. Like, dude, I'm trying to read this review to see if I want to buy this record. Okay, I understand if you can throw in, like they're like this, and but if the whole review is basically, like they will take a song by song, and instead of talking about the song, the extent to which they even delve into the music aspect of it is, oh, that sounds like, very Beatlesque. Okay, well, I've come to realize that to most people, anything that actually has a melody that you can actually remember, they call it Beatlesque.
PLS, yeah.
Okay? Why don't you say, well, this sounds very Nick Lowish,
Yeah.
or why doesn't, there are these like standard words that accompany in just about every review, and I find it like, I wish these people talked about the artist and their music, not what they sound like and this and that, because it's irrelevant.
Well,
We all sound like somebody.
I'll
the
say
big
this
thing
though.
is-
I mean, as somebody who's written a lot of reviews in my life and has read a lot of them as well, I think reference points are valuable because it does give the person the idea. Like if you like this, then you probably should check this out. But at the same time, you're correct in that if that's all the review is, then it doesn't really give you enough information. Are the songs really good? So you try to talk about the songs, and if you're going to use reference points, you're right. You don't want to just use the Beatles.
Right.
You want to use
Well,
other people.
I just quoted that because that's like the most common thing that
Right.
happens. But
the Beatles were so pervasive and they were so good across a lot of different kind of sounds, because they just ruled the 60s, that virtually any melodic pop after them automatically gets labeled Beatleish. You don't see that many people labeling people Stones-ish or Who's-ish or Kinks-ish. It always starts with Beatleish.
Right.
I've used the Beatles less than anything.
That's exactly my point. Like you have a song with a really great harmony. It's immediately Beatles. Why isn't it why isn't it Hollies? Who are masters of harmony? Why isn't it the Kings? Who had great harmony.
Well, when I write reviews, I try very hard that if a song reminds me of the Hollies, I'm going to say that. I'm not going to say Beatles. But you're right. A lot of them don't.
Yeah.
I'm not bitching about it. I'm just saying it's an observation that I made that, I very often read these reviews and okay, so this band sounds like that. Cool. That's in my wheelhouse. But what is their music like? What you, the reviewer, should give me some insight from your perspective, what you think about what you just heard.
Yeah.
And if you elaborate on that from some kind of intellectual or musical standpoint, I just might find it exciting and informative. Like I love how they modulate in this song, or I love the piano here, or this is great, that is great. That's something that tells me about the contents of what I'm about to decide to buy or not to buy.
For sure.
otherwise, it kind of leaves me with no impression of what the album is, other than just a few pointed references. That's my only beef with that whole thing. But
well, if I can say the new old album that we'll be talking about in a little bit, yes, it's Beatle-ish, but to me, it sounds like the Beatles came up with a whole batch of new songs and just plugged in and played them live to the point where you wet your pants. It's so fucking good.
There's your quote. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's what it sounds like to me. It sends chills up my spine because it sounds like you're kicking ass in a room playing the song full for the first time, and it just kicks ass. I got the autograph version right here, which is really cool.
Thank you.
That's awesome. But that first track, never mind, man.
Well, I actually have that one queued up, but before I play it, and we're just skipping now for effect, but we'll go back to the late 70s. But when I remember when your new version of the second Sorrows album came out, and I asked you, do you consider this a reissue or a new release? And you said, oh, it's a new release. Do you feel the same way about this?
Oh, absolutely. Even more so, because the other one, you could argue it's a recreation. It existed before. This never existed.
Yeah,
absolutely.
All right, well, I can say for sure it's going to be in my top 10 then.
Thank you.
Of the year, and we're only in April. Anyway, so Mark mentioned Nevermind, which is the opening track of the album, and so let's play it right now. Definitely a great way to start the record, by the way. So here we go. Sorrows with Nevermind from Parting Is Such Sweet Sorrow. Opening track to the new album by Sorrows, Parting Is Such Sweet Sorrow. It's so good, it can't stop.
I got it.
If I were to write a review of that song, while obviously there are Beatle references there, the first thing I would mention would be the Flamin' Groovies.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the Flamin' Groovies kind of rocked up those early Beatles songs. I mean, that
Yeah, they did.
style,
Yeah.
and that's kind of what I hear. You're doing something similar to what they did. I think.
Yeah. Don't forget, we're running a little banner across the bottom. It's bigstirrecords.com/sorrows. That's where you can pick this up, and probably all the usual places, Amazon and things like that. But I do have my copy, and as I said, my copy's got all 4 autographs on it, which is even cooler. It really makes it great. And that is CBGB's stage, correct?
That very much is. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was going to say, because you were talking about it up front, that is a CBGB stage, and I purposely chose that because it's kind of like exemplifies coming full circle. That's where it all started for us, and
It's a great photo of just the
it's
stage.
fantastic. Yeah,
And it's amazing. I mean, I feel so stupid because I was there. I was going to college at NYU, and CBGB's is right around the corner, and I could have seen the
there
Poppies.
was a walking
No
distance.
doubt about it. I could have
Walking
seen the
distance.
Poppies, and I
Yeah.
didn't because
Yeah.
back. It's ironic that I do what I do now because back then it was like, why this show costs $5? I could buy 2 promos for that. And so
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to get to CBGBs a number of times in the early days. I used to go up to see a band called The Fast. I don't remember.
Oh
if
yeah,
you
yeah.
remember the Zone Brothers,
Yeah,
Paul and
Mickey
Mickey
Zone,
Zone.
yeah.
he's here.
I
Hi.
remember.
I also went to CBGB's and he didn't. Boggles the mind. I had to drive down 2 hours from Bard College to get there. He was right there.
I know.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Such a fool.
Yep.
Loved Arena. Boom.
No clue. No clue.
No clue. But I did have the record though. I have to ask you, how did your music get into the hands of Greg Shaw, who's a hero of mine?
Oh, that's a funny story. So we at some point the Poppies did break up in between. It was kind of like an intermittent breakup. And during that time, Patty, the bass player from the band, and I made a tape. It was my first production. I had a Revox 2-track in my apartment, and we made a whole bunch of demos between him and I. And I decided to try and shop it. I didn't quite know what we were shopping for, with the publishing deal, or to, see if you can get the songs arrested, so to speak, or what. But I went everywhere, and somehow I got to see quite a few pretty substantial people, but no bites. So I was going around, and somehow or other, I ended up having a meeting with Greg Geller from Epic Records, who was at that time, he was the A&R man for Epic Records. He left later and became like a big guy somewhere else. I forget what label he was on. And
Sure.
I think he had something to do with Guns N' Roses or something, but maybe I'm
Okay.
mistaken. But anyway, he was the El Jefe at Epic Records at the time. So I came up to his office, my little tape in hand, because that's how you used to do this, my little
Right.
7-inch reel, and he put it on his tape recorder, and he plays it, and I see him, like really bopping and really digging it. I'm saying, oh Jesus, there's hope here, So the tape finished, and he goes, man, I love this stuff. I really wish I could do something. And I'm saying, well, I'm already used to this, where people start telling me, this is great. Then there comes the but.
Yeah.
So I'm waiting for the but, okay? And he goes, how much he loves it and this and that. He says, but, and I go, okay, here we go. He said, I would sign you in a heartbeat, but I had just signed the Hollies.
Oh, that's
And
right.
my-
You were on
and
Epic at that time.
and my budget is blown for the rest of the year. So I said,
Oh,
well,
man.
okay. That's a fairly what would I call it? That's easier to take than you telling me that my stuff sucks. Okay,
Right, yeah,
If you're telling me you can't sign me because you signed the Hollies, one of my other gods,
Yeah.
okay, then that's okay, So I'm about ready to leave, and he says, "But I tell you what, wait. Let me tell you something. There's a new label starting on the West Coast. There's this guy Greg Shaw, who runs this Who Put the Bump magazine, and he's starting a new record label, Bomb Records, and he just signed the Flaming Groovies to the label. Why don't you send it to him? Because I think this is going to be right up his alley, and tell him I sent you, and I said, sure, why not? So I sent the tape. I made another copy, more noise, because this is like 15th generation now.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I made another copy, sent it to Greg, and about 3 weeks later, I get a letter. Forget the phone calls; they were too expensive at that time. I get a letter from Greg saying, "I really love this stuff. Would you like to make a record? I'll be in New York in 3 weeks."
Wow.
And there goes, and there comes Your If She Cries.
Nice.
Such a wonderful song. It brings back a lot of memories to me too.
Yeah. In fact, there's another connection because our next single, Jealousy, was produced by Cyril Jordan.
Yeah. Oh, right. Okay.
You didn't know that?
No, if I had, I'd forgotten. But that's great.
When we came around to doing a second single, it was actually supposed to be on EP, and we recorded all 4 tunes, but we ran out of time in the studio, so only really 2 were finished completely. So it became a single, and for that, the Flaming Groovies just came back from England. They were recording with Dave Edmonds for what was to be, I think, Shake Some Action, the album. I think it was Shake Some Action.
Well, Shake Some Action was 76. So is it?
No, so it couldn't be that. Whatever it was in. Well, no, wait a minute. Yes, this was 76.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. And they just came back from England, and they were, I don't know if they're all there, but Cyril was there, and Cyril came and produced that single or those sessions. So that's another connection. It was great. We really had a blast working with him. It was a fun time. In fact, Cyril and Dave and Greg gave us the name of a tailor in England where they got all their jackets and suits from, so that when we went to England to record that Abortion called Love Too Late, the first one.
Oh yeah, well,
that's where
we'll get to that.
That's where we got our suits and jackets from. From the guy that Cyril gave us and
nice.
Greg gave us. Yeah.
So there's some silver lining in that experience.
Yeah, there was. But that's the story behind the Puppy's first record. Yeah, that's how the whole association with Bomb Records.
And Greg, of course, was the most enthusiastic proponent of this kind of music. But he was just one guy basically, and they couldn't make. He
was a visionary, definitely.
He was. Oh yeah. No, I'm so glad I got to know him.
But in fact, after I moved to the West Coast, when I moved from New York to LA. We rekindled our relationship, and I actually did quite a few records for him for bump releases. I did the Dead Boys, I did MC5, remastering and stuff like that. So we had a bit of a good relationship for a few years before he passed away.
Yeah, no, he was one of a kind.
Yeah.
All right, so obviously the Poppies don't make it big, but and so then you guys do, you disband, and then so how does Sorrows come about? And of course, we got to ask you about the name because of, again, an earlier band called The Sorrows.
Right. Well, first of all, let me congratulate you because you're one of the very few people who actually managed to say our name without sticking "the" in front of it. So that's one battle I've been successfully failing at ever since I created this band with this name. Is to be able for people to say Sorrows without saying The Sorrows. Now, as far as the name goes, basically what happened was I was looking for a name for a band, and I came up with about how musicians go. They take a yellow pad and then they have 18 pages of names of the band trying to find one. Well, I was one of them, and I kept writing, and nothing really stuck with me. And I have this rhyming dictionary that I use for lyric writing. And I was looking for words that would jump at me for some, I was looking for something that would resonate with me as I looked at it. And there were different words, and Sorrows was one of them. It really kind of jumped at me. That's before I even realized that obviously I was aware of the Sorrows. They were a great band, and Take a Heart was a huge hit. You
Yeah.
know, Indian Reservation was another one. But so I kept looking at different names, and this thing just coming back. It kept coming back at me, and I just said, "Hmm." And then I thought to myself, you know, in terms of how I envisioned the band to begin with, musically speaking, and like image-wise and everything else, I felt like what I wanted it to be is that to have this kind of like a down image, kind of like what Sorrows, what you think of Sorrows is kind of like a downer feeling, with the music being so up, you know, like kick you in your teeth, the energy and like really uplifting, kind of like these two things colliding in some way. And I thought that was like a really good concept. And then I thought of Their Sorrows, and I thought to myself, well, you know, Their Sorrows is a whole bunch of sorrows. You know, if I
Mm.
take out there and just call it sorrows, it then becomes like a concept.
Mm.
You know,
Okay.
it's more of a conceptual thing rather than a word in multiplied. You know, the sorrows. You know, this sorrow, that sorrow, this sorrow, and that sorrow. No,
Yeah.
it's sorrows as a so it stuck with me. And then when the band formed, you know, we had more discussions on this, and I basically said, well, that's the best I could come up with. If you can come up with something better, let's run it by. And then nobody ever did, so the name stuck, and that's how it came about. But yeah, it's been a problem. You know, I didn't realize that for a native English speaker, it's next to impossible to say sorrows without sticking the in front of it. It's
Yeah.
it's the natural thing to do, you know.
Well,
So
here's a band that had an even bigger problem with that, and that would be, as they used to call themselves, Bangles. Um, when they well, they were called Bangs, and then they found out another band had that name, so they had to change it, and they changed it to Bangles. But of course, it sounded so much like Beatles that everyone called them the Bangles, and for a while, they resisted. And their first three albums, the ones on also CBS, are called Bangles. But everybody, of course, referred to them as the Bangles. Ultimately, they just threw up their hands and said, "All right, everyone wants us to be the Bangles. We're going to start calling ourselves the Bangles." But you, unlike them, you just stuck to your guns.
no, yeah. Well, not to mention the fact that if people are till this day confusing us with Their Sorrows just on the name alone, if we called ourselves Their Sorrows, then that's it. All bets are off. As it is, I can't tell you how many times already. But you know what sound exchange is, right?
Yeah.
It's the clearinghouse for royalties, writing royalties and stuff. I can't tell you how many times I had to notify them that Their Sorrows is not sorrows, and take a heart is not my song, and you send the royalties to the wrong guy, and I had to return it and stuff like that. Even with that, however minor distinction, they even that's happening. So
Wow.
yeah, no, but
So
besides, I
how
really
does
like.
sorrow? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Pardon me.
I was going to say, how do Sorrows end up getting your deal with Columbia?
It's like one of those stories, you know. Basically, what happened was just like any other band on the scene at the time. You know, everybody wanted to get signed. That was the ultimate goal, to get a deal, you know,
Sure.
with a major label. Especially since really back then, at least where we were in New York, you know. Remember, everything was very regional at that point. There was no internet, you know. Like I had no idea what was going on in LA unless it became national, you know. So
Right.
regionally speaking, there really was no minor label or independent labels to speak of, you know. So the whole deal was, you know, get a deal with a major label, and that was it. So everybody was trying, and needless to say, even doing something like a demo tape was very difficult, because you either did some crap in your garage that sounded like crap, or you had to go to a studio, which was prohibitively expensive. And, you know, we're all broke ass musicians. We didn't have money for that. So it was tough going, but, you know, we were doing whatever we could. And basically what happened was, at some point in time, this girl came to us after one of our shows at CBGB, in fact, at the end of the show, and offered us. She was an apprentice or intern at the major recording studio in New York and offer us to bring us in, to do some recordings, because that was also a way for her to practice her skills and stuff.
Oh wow.
So we did this demo with her, and nothing much happened with it. And then that was it. We went about our business, and we were just doing stuff. And all of a sudden, this guy shows up again at CBGB at one of our gigs and introduced himself. That was Mark Milchman, who said, I work at Media Sound. I'm one of the engineers there. I think he also did a maintenance engineering there. And he said, I found this tape of yours in a basement collecting dust, and I decided to listen to it, and I just absolutely loved it. Would you guys be interested in working with me? I have a production company, I'd like to bring you back and do some demos. So we said, hell yeah, why not? Sure. Absolutely. So we started to do these demos, and we were like, halfway finished, maybe, like the tracks were far from finished, like scratch vocals maybe, and guitars missing, that missing, whatever. And in the middle of all this, for some reason, the guy who ran Pavilion Records, to which we were eventually signed, was working in a studio too, and heard us working on our stuff, and approached Mark, who's this? What's going on here, this and that. And long story short, basically Mark got us the deal with Pavilion Records, which was CBS Records, one of the labels under the umbrella of CBS Records. And we were signed even before we finished the damn demo.
Wow.
Which was really funny. I used to joke about it because, like, we were always told that you need a demo in order to get signed, and here we are. We got signed without even a demo. So what's wrong with this?
No, you had it wrong. You just have to be working on a demo to be signed.
Right.
What a story!
So, that's
man.
What happened. And the funny thing was when before all this happened, the main guy from the label came to the loft where we were rehearsing, and we were loud as fuck. I mean, it was, I can't imagine anybody who's not doing it sitting there and enduring what we're doing.
Right.
But he, he liked it, and he says, when is your next gig? And we go like, oh yeah, it just so happened it was next Thursday at Max's Kansas City. He says, oh, okay. I'll come and check you guys out. And we said, and he left, and we go like, yeah, fuck, sure. Like everybody else that says they'll show up and they never will. That Thursday came, the place was packed, and all of a sudden this entourage waltzes in, like all these Armani suits and everything else. And it's like, I don't know, half the CBS building, all of a sudden showed up there. I mean, we almost shit in our pants, we were so nervous. So we go to play. Suffice it to say, in the first song, I think I broke 3 strings.
Oh my God!
In the opening song,
really?
we played what I would call probably the worst performance of our career.
Wow!
So we finished. We'll go upstairs to the dressing room, and we're like all bummed out and say, "Oh fuck, we blew it. We blew it big time." So we're sitting there, drinking our beers, kind of moping around, and the door flies open, and these 2 guys come in, the guy from the label and some other guy in the Armani suit. And the guy in the Armani suit says, like, what are you guys doing Monday? I feel like saying, what's it to you? So I said, well, I don't know, like, why? He says, well, if you could come down to my office, I'm the attorney representing the label, and I'd like to talk about getting you signed, because if everything goes right as of Monday, you're a CBS recording artist.
Wow.
And we were like, what? I mean, I can't even describe what that place turned into after they left.
Yeah.
That was it,
Geez,
and we didn't even finish the fucking demo.
Yeah.
Now, the next thing I would ask under normal circumstances is, you So you get to work with one of your producer idols, Shel Talmy. And, well, I'll let you take it from there.
Do I
Yeah.
have to?
And, well, I've seen you talk about it, so I figured I'd ask, but we don't have to.
Well, the way that went is, when it came, Mark Milchman, who was our producer on the first album, one of the co-producers, but really the main guy as far as I'm concerned. When it came to the second album, they decided, my memories of the exact histrionics of what went down are kind of hazy at this point. Some of them I just don't know. But the bottom line of all this is that they decided that they wanted to have a name producer for the second album, so that, to get us to the next stage. Well, they shoved Mark aside, which I wasn't too happy about, but I thought, I don't know what's going on, but for now, let's just roll with it and see where it goes. So we had several people who came to sit in with us, like, talk and listen to us. And we ended up with Shel Talmy, who to us was like a god. I mean, this is the guy who supposedly, I shouldn't say supposedly, at that time I took it for granted, produced all these incredible, life-changing records that we all, loved and adored. The Who, the Kinks, this and the other thing. So he signed on to be on the project, and I thought, we like hit Nirvana here,
Yeah.
So we went to London with Shel to record the second album. But unfortunately, it turned out that what we had in mind and what he had in mind and the label had in mind were not exactly on the same page. And very quickly, it became pretty apparent to us that we're not making our record, we're making Shel's record, the record company's record.
Yeah.
And, things kind of went downhill from there. We listened at some point in time. We're still in London, but I could already feel where this was going. All of a sudden, all these session musicians started coming up. Jet was no longer playing drums, all kinds of stuff, So I said to the guys, let's see where this goes, because maybe we're wrong. Maybe this is what we need to do that will still represent us, but this is the price to pay to get to the next level where we have more leverage over what we're doing.
Right. Yeah.
But it needs to be something that I can honestly say is good. Maybe not my vision, maybe not what I like, but it has to be fucking great. Okay. And if it is great, I'm going to eat dirt and say it's great.
So
it is great. Okay. So that's how we left it off until that day when Shel was finished with the recording and for his big presentation. So we went to the studio and he's playing this stuff. He's sitting by the mixing board with the engineer, with a big shit grin on his face, like, listen to this. And I'm standing by the tape recorder and listening to this. And like almost from the get-go, what's coming at me from the speakers is like what I've come to label. To me, it sounds like Barry Manilow meets the Doobie Brothers on a bad night. Okay, I'm listening to this and I just say, this is an absolute garbage. This is not Soros. This is, I don't know what this is, other than our songs being pretty much butchered.
Yeah.
Okay, it's so I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if I should like rip the tape off the tape recorder and like roll it down the stairs, or should I take him and roll him down the stairs? Being a gentleman that I am, I decided I wrote him a note, walked out of the studio. I said, I want no part of it. Do whatever the hell you want to do with this, and I'm done. And I never came back. So.
And the rest of the band felt the same way.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Well, this is the kind of thing that happened, unfortunately, with so many bands. And my friend Jeff and I used to say they got slick. that was the word we would use for exactly Barry Manilow meets the production is way too slick. And this happened with so many bands back then. Some of them
Well,
probably didn't mind.
It
and
wasn't
others-
even it wasn't even that it was slick. It was just wholly unrepresentative
Yeah,
of us as a band.
yeah,
We have three lead singers. All of a sudden, we have one lead singer, Joey being the one who pretty much does all the songs. Okay,
wow.
Ricky somehow miraculously got the privilege of singing one song. Okay, you got stuff like keyboards. Oh, we don't play fucking keyboards. Okay, I understand that I use keyboards all the time and as a an addition to our sound, not to make it that sound, to make the keyboards the focal point of our song.
Yeah.
You have a song to give you an example. This ballad that's on that album called "Breaking My Heart." Okay, if you listen to Shell's version, there's some freaking castrato singing the thing. We can't sing like that. Nobody in a band sings like this.
Right.
What the fuck are you thinking? This
Yeah.
is not the band. This is a pre-manufactured concoction.
Yeah.
So it just went on and on and on down the line. I think I'm losing my voice. I'm sorry. I'm a little under the weather.
That's all right. That's all right.
Sorry.
So it was stuff like this that I didn't so much. Like I said, my main thing was, it may not be my idea of what this record should be, but if it's great, if I can actually say honestly, and I'm not above or beyond admitting that, if I can say, okay, this is not what I had in mind, but this is fucking great, okay, then I give up. Okay, hats off to you. We move on. But it was not. It was not.
Yeah, that's that's so awful, and I'm so sorry you had to go through that. But it's around that period of time, into the 80s. That was a common tale. I think of a band, not that they sounded like you. I think of a band like Ambrosia, for example, who put out two wonderful albums, and then suddenly they're sounding like the Doobie Brothers, and even worse. And it's like they went along with it. I mean, some bands wanted to make it so badly that they would do whatever they were told. You stuck.
Well, we went along with it to the extent that we basically said to them, we didn't know what to do. I mean, remember, we were just young musicians, and we come back and we got this shit on our hands, and we basically, we said to them, look, we will not support this album. Okay.
Yeah.
We're going right back. If you're expecting us to basically conform to what this album sounds like and be like this, forget about it. We're going back. Joey's singing his songs, I'm singing mine, Ricky's singing his. We have nothing to do with this album, and you can do whatever the fuck you want to do with this. If you have any problems, you should have talked to us before you did that, not after. Because if we had a meeting and you said, look, guys, here's what we have in mind, okay? We think that you need A, B, C, and D, okay, which will obviously change stuff. Are you cool with that? Are you on board with that? And we would have either said no, fuck no, or we would have said, okay, let's try it. But to go behind our backs and just fucking spring it on us like this, no fucking way. So, right there and then it was already a problem.
Yeah.
Because the album came out, we kept quiet. Not to mention the fact that, again, there was no internet. Like, what am I going to do? Stand in the street and tell people about what happened?
Yeah.
It's not like I could go on Facebook and start bitching, to 10 million people at the same time and expose this sham for what it was.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, we rolled with it, and it felt like in some way that we were complicit because we said yes. In the end, the record came out, but ever since then, it's just. And of course, the record was a flop, just like I anticipated. I said,
well, yeah, and you know the story, and you know why it was a flop. But as the buying public, when you buy that album, because you want the we listened to it, it was like, what the hell?
Well, a lot of people told me they loved the album. They definitely felt that this is like a different band, but I still like it. and I don't blame them. Even when the Love to Lay, the real album came out, I've heard quite a few comments where they said, I still like the old one. I'm just used to it. I've listened to it all these
Yeah.
years.
I can see
Fine,
that.
I mean, I can't blame you. If you listen to a Heartbreak Hotel for all your life and all of a sudden you discovered that it was sung by somebody else, you'd still say, well, I still like that one.
True.
That's the record that represents something to you emotionally and you're attached to it. Fine, I'm good. But what was really indicative of all this stuff that I'm talking about is the fact that even Love to Late, the real album, was in a sense an accident. And by this, what I mean is, but because by then I actually had the copy of the original multi-track tapes of that album. So when we decided to reissue it, what would have been easier than just simply put up the faders, change this, change that, little thing here, maybe change the vocal, from the guy who should have sung it to the guy who sings it. The whole thing was such garbage. I mean, bass sound, drum sound. He ditched Jet on the second day of the sessions and brought the session guy. Was he good? Yeah, he was okay. He played maybe more than time. Jet was very nervous, and when you're nervous, you do have timing problems. The guy was okay. The guy was decent. He probably came in from some McDonald's commercial an hour before. Play these parts. There was no soul. There was no. Jet is the
Right.
heart and the heartbeat of the band. You take that out, and you have a drum machine. More or less. And even with this guy, there were timing problems. Believe me. Okay, it's not like he was a freaking metronome. Okay, and Jet wasn't. So there. Okay, so anyway, that's when I realized I can't even use this.
Yeah.
Besides the fact that I don't want to use it, there's not even like I said, there's no things where I can like maybe salvage 80% and replace 20%. That's the most important one. The amount of time and elements that I needed to replace on that original album to make it for what it should be. The next thought was, well, fuck it, then let's just do it from the beginning.
Redo it. Yeah.
Makes no sense. Okay, so that's when I went to New York. We worked with. By then, unfortunately, Jet retired from. He didn't want to partake. So I was. We had Luis Herrera on drums. From my band. Him from my band here in LA. But we did all the stuff with Ricky and Joey. We did all the guitars and vocals and stuff like that. And I came back to LA and I did the rest. And so, like I said, even that album was somewhat of an accident because when I actually got to hear, forget the 2-track mixes, that's what you hear on the record. But when I got down to the nitty gritty of what was actually there, it was just garbage.
Bad.
Yeah.
Whoever session guys came in and played on these songs, they didn't even play the right chords. Okay.
Wow.
What a mess. What a mess.
Well, thank God you did have the opportunity to do it the way you wanted. And not everybody does.
By then I had my own studio. I knew what I was doing. So all the tools were here, and
sure.
I said, that's why I said, what am I going to do with this? Just try to polish the turd.
Right.
When you polish the turd, you get a nicely polished turd. It's still a turd.
So how do you end up associating with Big Stir, Rex and Christina?
Yeah, that was also another one of those life's coincidences because when I first met them, I don't think they even had a label. They had this series of concerts at here in Burbank, as well, Joe's American Cafe, I think it was called.
That's it, yeah.
Unfortunately, it's a great place. Unfortunately, I think it bit the dust during the.
It did. COVID COVID killed it.
Yeah, but one day out of the blue, Rex, I think, reached out to me asking me if my band would like to partake in it. I said, sure. I kind of knew them peripherally. Really, I didn't know much about them, but after we played this and we played several other ones, I got to know them as people and everything else, and they were just so cool. I really liked them. but that was basically the extent of it. And by that time, I was working on Love to Lay, the real album
Yeah.
that was to be. I already had my solo album out by then on Deadbeat Records, so it wasn't with them. And when I finished with Love Too Late, I started shopping it around with different labels, and I couldn't find anybody really. Either they were not interested in us, or I wasn't interested in them. Just didn't seem like a right fit.
Sure.
And then all of a sudden, by then I was hearing about Bixter Records. They were putting stuff out, and I think we did some more gigs when they already had the label. And all of a sudden, like it popped into my head, like why not call Rex and Christina and ask them if they would be interested in doing this? This was still a pandemic, during the pandemic, so we set up a Zoom call, had a meeting, and things just clicked. I mean, it was just wonderful, just
That's great.
talking to them. It really felt like coming home.
Mm.
Just
That's
it was
wonderful.
just this great feeling. It's like this is it. That's the label. That's the people I want to be associated with. And
They are very good to their artists. I have to
yeah,
say that.
they
They
really
work,
are.
and they work very, very hard.
Oh my God, do they ever? I always talk about this. How ironic that is. There we were as a band, and me as a solo artist. There we were on CBS back then, one of the biggest labels in the world. I mean, a dream
Sure.
come true. And we didn't get 1% of the exposure and yield from what we were doing compared to these two people who are
Mm.
like a little ant compared to what like CBS represents. I
Yeah.
mean, ever since we became associated with Big Stir, I think we got more exposure. More people know about us. More people know about our music than we ever got from CBS, the biggest one of the
Well,
biggest
you
labels in
mentioned
the
the
world.
internet several times, and
Yeah,
thank God there is social media, and you don't have to be rich to use it.
right.
You just have to use it effectively, and they've done that for sure, and they've
Yeah,
gotten your music to the people who would really want to
right,
hear it.
right. But the equivalent of that back then was money and the manpower. CBS. I still remember going to Black Rock, to visit this guy or that guy. They had the whole floor called marketing department.
Mm.
Yeah,
People on the phones, people doing this. They had the money for advertising and everything else. It just wasn't being used or used foolishly, stupidly. I'll give you an example. When Teenage Heartbreak came out, I had a huge fight with them because they wanted to put an ad, which did come out. I still have a copy of it in Billboard and Cashbox, two major trade publications at the time. I don't know if they still
sure.
exist even. They wanted to put a full page ad for the album, $5,000 a pop. And I said to them, you are going to spend $5,000 on an ad in a magazine that nobody reads except for people who are in the business and who get these records for free.
Yeah.
Good point.
Why don't you take this $5,000 and give us a full page ad in the Village Voice that everybody reads and book us in the CBGB for a week straight? Okay? Even if you have to pay Hilly to do this, okay? That's money spent because that ad is going to be seen by people who actually buy records,
Yeah.
and that week's worth of gig at CBGB is going to be seen by people who actually go and see bands. Nope,
Sure.
no go. You don't understand how business works, man. We got to do this because the this and the DJs and the program directors, yada yada yada. You know, that was it.
But what a great cover that is.
Teenage Heartbreak was all of a sudden we'll get this word. Remember, this is no internet, right? I don't even know how we heard about it. All of a sudden, Teenage Heartbreak becomes a song of the summer in Seattle, Washington, of all places where it rains all the time. Okay?
Yeah, it's true.
Song of the summer.
Are you having
What
Mark?
should
Are
they
you
do? They should put us on a plane.
are you having connection issues here, Mark?
What?
It's lagging a little bit. Yeah.
What?
Hello,
We're having
I
connection
think we
issues
lost
with
audio.
you.
now we're just having a little
You know
lag
what?
issue,
My
Arthur.
computer is about to die. I'm gonna bring the cord. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Still hear you. Yeah, we still hear you. We're just having the video is like frozen, but we can still hear you.
Maybe that's what's going on. Maybe once he plugs in, it'll get better.
Yeah, might just be low on the power side there. He's working on it.
If you've just tuned in, we're speaking with Arthur Alexander, power pop meister, with bands like the Poppies, Sorrows, and now doing his own thing and recreating Sorrows music that should have come out at the time the way it sounds now.
Yeah, well, while Arthur's doing that, maybe we want to play another track from the album. We can listen to some music.
I absolutely will. Here's another power pop-ish tune from the album. The third one we're going to play is going to be a little bit different, but great as well. Here's a song on the album. It's one of the later tracks to show that the consistency of quality is there. Here's a track called Too Much Love from Parting Is Such Sweet Sorrow on Big Stir Records.
Man.
Certainly quite a Beatle-esque ending. I'll have to say that, but I'm sure you did that on purpose.
My apologies. I just realized I had like 1% of battery left, so I had to grab a power cord.
No worries. That's why we played the record. Arthur? Are you familiar with a band? Well, it's a one-man band essentially called the Toms.
No.
All right. Well, this will be a good story for you. Back in 1979, a gentleman from New Jersey named Tom Marolda decided to record an album by himself in his home studio, and he named it. He named the project the Toms because he played everything. So Tom on bass, Tom on drums. It became kind of an independent power pop classic, and it's been reissued. That album has been reissued several times over the years, including by Not Lame Records, Bruce Brodin's company. And you talk to any power pop fan who's like really into the underground, and they'll talk about the Toms with just absolute reverence. We even had Tommy Marolda as a guest on our show a while back. But that song, Too Much Love, definitely reminds me a lot of what Tom does.
Really?
Oh,
and
yeah.
I mean that as a total compliment because I love that album so much.
That's great. That's great. Thank you so much.
That machine, right out of the bat, the machine gun drumming.
Yeah, that leaves a really strong impression. Who's playing drums on that track?
Jet Harris, our original drummer. Yeah.
I asked you on purpose because I knew the answer. Because Jet Harris, there's another name. Jet Harris, being of the instrumental band, the Shadows. They were the Shadows, a band that we didn't get to hear in the States practically at all, and I didn't know about them until.
What a crime!
Yeah, it was a crime. I didn't know about them till the 80s when I heard the song Shindig on an independent radio station. Right. It's like, who the hell is that? Then once I found out, of course, I ran out and bought every Shadows thing I could find. So I'm going to assume I'll go out on a giant leap here and assume that Jet was not his given name by his parents. So how did this all happen that he was named Jet Harris?
Oh, that happened when he was when he joined the Puppies as a drummer. When he joined, his actual name is Arthur.
Oh wow! Okay. How about that?
So I said, "Fuck no, we can't have two Arthurs in a band." But his middle name is Harris, just like mine. So when I heard that, instantaneously clicked in my head, Harris, got to be Jet. Except I gave him another T, because he's like a double engine jet plane, So he became Jet Harris with a double T.
Wow,
that's the story behind it.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, you guys, I mean, not only did you look cool, because my first exposure was the Teenage Heartbreak album cover, and I didn't know anything about the band. I was just flipping through like I always did, A to Z, and when I came to S, and there was the album, I was like, oh, I have to have this based on just what the album looked like.
You have no idea how many people told me that they bought the album on a cover alone.
I was one of them as well. Yeah.
Right? So the cover alone, and then you've got 4 great names in the band. I mean, Arthur Alexander, Joey Cola, Jet Harris, Ricky Street. I mean, that sounds like a band. I mean, no matter how, I mean, that just does. There's no Harry Mulkschlagel,
Right.
He's not in the band. And you guys just exuded cool, And
thank you. That was the general idea.
It was a general idea. But you're right. You had that, even the album cover, you all looked a little sorrow. You looked down,
That's
you look worn out is what you look cool, but worn out.
You got it. Yeah.
That's great.
We're wearing like, old smiles and
Yeah, right. Tell us about the aura. Now these songs on Parting Is Such Sweet Sorrow, are these songs that were written at the time for a proposed third album?
Yes, they were. Some of them were already written and we were playing them live. Some of them were still being written. Some, the covers, we were already doing them live. But most of those songs were written. It's kind of hard to put things in perspective because different timelines. Like, for instance, Out of My Head, the first single that came out from on the album. I wrote that song during the Teenage Heartbreak session,
Oh
and
wow.
I wrote it there because the studio had this great Steinway piano. So in between the takes and between, I started playing a little riff, and it just took off from there. And since I don't have a piano, I didn't have a piano at home. I knew I had to finish it in the studio while I still had the piano. So like that one got written back then. It was actually slated for Love Too Late. Thank God somehow it got passed on and didn't get recorded. Thank God. And and there were other tunes which we wrote in the interim or after the Love Too Late. So when it came time to do this album, I mean, remember, if you're familiar with the backstory of this album, everything seems to be an accident here. This album was not meant to be an album. All we did was, we basically, I mean, the whole thing turned into a shitstorm with our label. You know, we were just completely down. Everything was going sideways. Felt like the floor was caving in under us. And we rekindled our relationship with Mark, who basically brought us into Media Sound for one night, just to lay down some tracks, and work on, just basically lay down some tracks, so we have some like running demos, if you will, And we said, hell yeah, let's go beat the shit out of the instruments, get our anxiety and our demons out, and that was it, So when we got into the studio, you know, we didn't give it a second thought. It was not supposed to be an album, We didn't like set up, spend a week getting a snare drum sound and this and then, we just threw 3 amps in the middle of the room, drums in the middle, mics in front, and just let her rip like as if we were on stage. And it was only then, as we started playing these songs, every time we finished, something, we would go to the control room with Mark and listen to it. And we were like literally gasping for breath. It was just, there was such an incredible energy, angst, and aggression, and this, I mean, we were tired as hell by then because, we were playing a lot, so we were fine, we were really a fine oil machine. But the whole vibe was like, we looked at each other and just said, I can't believe this. I mean, you could literally see a middle finger flying out of the speakers, And we said, we're back with a vengeance, And, so this is not, like I said, I've come to say, like by the time I left the studio the next morning, the sun was up. I had a shit grin on my face, and I said, "This is our next album."
Oh.
There's no point pretending like we're gonna. No, that this is all good. We're gonna make it better. A good example of that is this song "Cricket Man" that's on this album.
No, that's going to be the next one that I play, and the last one, because that one stands. That's my favorite track, and it definitely stands out from the other ones, as it's
Well, the story behind that is, as far as the recording goes, we were just barely started working on this when the whole session happened, so we practically didn't even know the song very well.
Yeah,
and literally just about, I don't know, it was like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. We're basically wrapping things up, where all of a sudden I had this thought. I said, Mark, hang on a second, before we break down, could we just run a quick and dirty of this song, just for me, to take home and keep working on it, because we were literally working on that song, maybe started working like a few weeks before that. So as we're playing it, we're literally flying by the seat of our pants. We don't even know what's next, the next verse, or is it a chorus, or is it going to be a song? So I'm standing there in the middle of the room, kind of navigating and leading everybody, also in a spur of the moment. I don't know, it's like, that would feel like that would be a good place for the next verse. Oh yeah, no, let's do the solo here. Let's do this. Literally like that, okay? So we finished this take. Of course, there are mistakes on it, and little clams and stuff. We finished the take. I look through the window, and Mark is sitting there, and he's got this face on, and like something weird, and he just kind of like motions to come into the studio. So we put down our instrument, we go into the control room, and he says, "Listen to this, guys. This is a fucking monster." So we look at him and says, like, "What?" So he plays the track, and it was a fucking monster. But of course, us being us, says, "No, no, 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 no. That's great, but we can definitely do better. Let's do another take, okay?" If my memory serves me well, I think we did like 2 of them. We didn't even finish them. Nothing came even close to this. So it took a little fixing and stuff like that, needless to say. But that's the take you hear on that record.
Wow.
This is the only take of that song.
Wow.
The other one, I think we gave up like after a verse. Things just were not gelling. This had such magic in it that there was just no way.
Just kills, man.
No, it absolutely does have that magic.
Yeah.
There was no room for improvement.
No.
So let's play that one. This is just wonderful.
Thank you.
So this is Cricket Man, which is the first song on side 2. If you have the vinyl, or if you don't have the vinyl, if you have the CD, it's laid out for you right there that this is the song meant to be the first one on side 2. So here we go.
Big Stir Records, pick it up. Yep.
You got it. Cricket Man by Sorrows. Here we go.
No man, time was you had the world at your command. Now we'll carry on, we'll do the best we can, just like you did again and again. Cricket Man. One more coffee, one more cigarette, one more night I'm trying to forget. I fall asleep and still I find this bloody night lingers on my mind. I hear pistol shots ringing in my head, headlines screaming, he's dead, he's dead. I close my eyes, see a woman cry, and a little boy asking why, why? You stole the times, I must confess, when I misjudged like all the rest. Said a dream is over, can't you
Well, what can I say? That is an anthem for the ages. It really is.
Man,
Thank you so much. It means a lot.
that's real.
Yeah, it's an incredible song, and obviously there was the "I Am the Walrus" guitar licks in the middle there, which
That's what it was.
That wasn't an accident, I'm sure, but
Yeah, that was a quote.
It's Sorrows-ish.
but yeah, I mean,
Yeah, that sounded kind of Beatley, didn't it?
I didn't get that at all. No.
Little Beatley, yeah. That one did.
Now that you mention it, it's a great touch. Great touch. Yeah.
It truly is an anthem, and nobody's recording stuff like that anymore, which is a shame. But I mean, so I have to ask now, what's the future for Sorrows? Are you going to be doing live performances, more records?
I don't know, and quite frankly, I don't think so. The reality is life. I'm in LA. The rest of the guys are on the East Coast, and it's just incredibly. I'm sure you're familiar with the live scene during your IPOs. What that looks like.
Yeah.
Touring has become incredibly difficult, especially unless you're doing it constantly. So I don't know. If somebody offers us like all kinds of obscene money, maybe we can do that. Like I'll take $100.
That's obscene. I'll tell you what. I didn't get to see you back in the day, but I did see you a number of years ago. You and Joey were touring. You had Robbie in the band.
Yeah,
Robbie Wrist.
Yeah, Robbie Wrist band, and you guys were playing not too far from me in Dunellen, New Jersey, at a place called Roxy and Dukes. It was very
that was a great place.
Oriented. And man, it was a great show. That was so good, and I was so happy to see this band from my high school days. Here they are, playing in front of me, and it was such a great show. So if you get the opportunity to somehow do it again, I'm definitely there. But
definitely. Like I said, it's really a question of logistics and
it really is.
How
Yeah,
to do it,
it's tough.
We can't just up and do a gig. You know what I mean? Like if we were in the same city, so it has to be some kind of a tour, and to keep a band on the road really blatantly requires money, and the money that's in the touring on that level, at least, is just not there to make it feasible. So
it's very that's I lament that these days in that bands can't play places like the size of Roxy and Dukes, or and go on a tour and be sustainable, because it's just
you've got to be young and just not give a shit about sleeping in vans and eating McDonald's and just struggling.
Right. Yeah. Well, even if you minimize it to that level, there's still fixed costs such as gas, and food to whatever extent. It all amounts to something. Yeah. And when you play for literally peanuts or less, it's unless you have your own infinite funds to basically bankroll the tour yourself.
Right. Yeah.
It becomes unattainable.
Will there be more records though?
Good question.
Good question. Very good question. I don't know. At this point, I don't see that happening. All the guys are doing their own thing. I'm doing my own thing. I'm working on my next album as we speak. This is the last one under your name. It did very well for me back a couple of years ago on my best of list. So as a solo act, it's a little bit more rock, you could say, than Sorrows, but still great. Lots of melodies there. It's a little bit more what?
A little bit more rock.
Oh, rock
as opposed to pop.
I see. Yeah, well, as you've come to know me, I'm pretty eclectic. I'm really all over the place, and that's how I like it. So, I just write the damn songs and just let them take me wherever they want to go. I don't. Yeah. It's not something I preconceive, and some kind of a formula. It's this album.
You put a great stamp. Put a great stamp on it, and I'm saying you put a great stamp on on, the power pop genre, so to speak. And for me personally, I can remember the day I went to Record Revolution in Reading, PA, and saw the Teenage Heart. I had to buy it, so it meant something to me then. And 40 something years later, whatever it's been, it means something to me today. So having you here on the show and being able to talk with you, and the time I did meet you up in Denellen, it's just
and I mean, it means something spiritually to me too, because not only is the music great, but it's a symbol of somebody who says, I'm doing it my way. I don't care what happens. I don't care if I'm no longer on a major label. I want this stuff out the way I want it. And so the fact
the only way to do it.
Yeah,
it's the fact that you've been able to do it, especially in today's climate.
It's wonderful.
You try to be like the flavor of the week. You're done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Besides, at this stage of my life, I love what I do. I know what I want. I know how I want it, and that's all that matters.
Yeah.
And if you like it, great. God bless you. If you don't, well, there's so much stuff out there. I'm sure you'll find something that you like.
Well, we were honored to have you on the program.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time.
Of course, likewise. And yes, so this is the new album, Parting is Sweet Sorrow, on the great Big Stir label. Pick it up wherever you can from Big Stir or Amazon or in your local record emporium. Yes, there are record stores left.
Yeah,
so if you see it there, support the record store.
And as I said, if you're a Sorrows fan, if you go to the Big Stir website, you've got this great version which has autographs all across the.
Well, there is that. Yeah.
That's very
also it's the best. It really is the best source because it goes directly to them and to the artist, and they got the complete. They have a complete catalog of all our records and my records.
That makes sense. And
they have so many great artists on the label. You may just discover something that you didn't even know.
Indeed. Very good point.
It's a good point. BigStirRecords.com/sorrows. That's where you can go, my friends, and pick it up. And top to bottom, it's all killer, no filler, as they used to say. It's a great. It's a great album, and I call it an album because it is an album.
It is an album.
Thank you so much for joining us on Material.
Thank you for your time as well, Arthur. Well, I'll see you around LA, I'm sure, somewhere.
I'm sure. Thank you, guys.
God bless you, my friend. Have a great evening and best wishes with the album. It's fantastic.
Thank you so much. It's doing great. Thank you.
Very good.
Have a great one, Arthur. See you.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Yes, that was Arthur Alexander.
Man, that was so good.
Yeah, pop meister extraordinaire, emeritus, although he's still recording. But somebody who is definitely in the pantheon of what this power pop thing has been all about for for more than 40 years now, almost 50. That is coming up. So speaking of coming up, we have lots of great guests coming up. But first, we have to mention again that this was our final show on Wednesdays. Barring any sort of special circumstance, but it won't be a regular.
As I said, if Barbara Eden wants to come on a Wednesday, we'll have Barbara Eden on a Wednesday.
We'll figure it out, yeah.
But no, this is the last. It's great to have Arthur on our last Wednesday show. That's 199 shows that were primarily on Wednesdays, and
so for our 200th show, we just had to make some kind of a change, and indeed we did, because now we're going to be on more or less regularly on Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, and everything in between. We feel that Sunday night might be more convenient for people to watch live, and so that's why we're moving. We're going to have our first Sunday show this coming Sunday, the 13th. And it'll just be Mark and me, unless something really unusual and last minute comes up. We'll be talking about, what we normally talk about, items in life, new releases, maybe a Stump the Bash, maybe not. I hope so, because I love the game. And another twist on, let's say favorite things for people. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yep, indeed.
And then we're going
this Sunday.
This Sunday. Next week. Where's the record? There it is. Next week, next Sunday after that, April 20th, I should say, we're going to have a gentleman who's been part of the LA scene for many, many years. First with his band, the Piper Downs, and now as a solo artist. Here's his brand new record, Bobby Bogner's Handsome and Then Some. A really, really good power pop record, as one would expect from our guest. But he's not just a musician. He's a several-time national Scrabble champion. He had a show about food on the History Channel. So he's quite the Renaissance man, and will be quite the interview as well.
Very cool.
Bobby Bogner on April 20th, Sunday. So at 5 o'clock Pacific, 8 o'clock Eastern. So mark that down. The 27th, I'll be in Chicago doing IPO. And in fact, that will be 7 o'clock Central Time. I think our Sunday show will just about be ending. So we're going to figure out what we're going to do about that. Will we move it earlier and do kind of a Liverpool thing? Will we move it later so that I'll be out of the venue and we can talk about stuff? We'll keep you posted. We don't even know yet.
Thanks, Tim.
We sure hope so, Tim. So that's on the 27th. We'll fill you in. On the 4th, we're going to have noted liner note writer, producer, musician, all of that and more. Mr. Andrew Sandoval, who has certainly made a name for himself with all the Monkees reissues that he's helmed, with the Monkees books that he has put out. And when we talk about books, we're talking about huge tomes, incredible stuff. And Andrew has seen a lot and done a lot, and we're going to have a fine time speaking with him on May 4th. Coming up on May 11th, we have another icon of the pop scene, the main man of, in my opinion, the best band ever to come out of Sweden. That would be Beagle, who released 2 amazing albums in the early 90s. And they were the final band ever to be signed to Polar Records, which is ABBA's label. Just a pop music genius, in my opinion, and we're very glad to have him. Magnus Borjesson of Beagle, not Agnes Borjesson, like we thought until Vivica set us straight. Magnus Borjesson. I'm sure I sound ignorant to a Swede even saying it that way, but at least that's closer. So we'll have him on the 11th. It's going to be a little bit earlier than because he's in Sweden, so that would be like 3 a.m. for them. So we're going to move that one earlier. I'm not sure exactly how many hours, but we'll just stay tuned for more specific details on that.
Yeah, cool.
And then on May 18th,
it keeps going. We got guests coming.
Keeps going. Yeah, I had the pleasure of seeing the Smithereens play last weekend out here at Canyon Club. And singing lead for the Smithereens now is a member of one of the best pop bands ever. They don't get the respect that they deserve, but they're starting to with some of the new records that they've been doing. And I'm talking about the Cowsills, and we're going to have the drummer from Cowsills, who happens to be named Cowsill. Yes, John Cowsill, along with his wife, who's famous in her own right as lead guitar, singer-songwriter of Bangles and the Bangles. And they've come together to record a brand new record, which by that time will be out. In fact, it's coming out on vinyl on Record Store Day. And soon after, it will come out on CD. And why do I not have the name in front of me right now? Mark, you got it?
I had it right here. Hold on a second.
I'm blanking because all I got was the files, and I listened to those. I don't have the
files right here. Hold on. Gosh darn it.
Anyway, it's under Vicky Peterson and John Cowsill.
Yeah.
And why is it not? Oh, this is embarrassing, but whatever. No,
it's because it's brand new. It's not even released yet, so we got to.
It's not even released yet. Yes. But it does have a name. Let me see if I can.
I got it right here. What
is it called?
Hold on. It is. Hold on. La 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 la. I had it right there. Now I just, it's all these screens you have open. Modern day technology.
It's called modern day technology.
No, it's all the screens I have open.
No, I'm kidding.
Here it is. It's just, it takes its time to come up. It's called Long After the Fire.
Yes, Long After the Fire.
Nikki Peterson and John Cowsill.
Nikki Peterson and John Cowsill. And let me tell you, it might surprise you what kind of music it is, but I'll tell you this much: they do it as well as just about anybody could, and we'll be playing tracks from that. And by then a lot of you might have it, but I'll let the cat out of the bag. It's basically a country album, not country rock, we'll say, but more of an emphasis on country than rock, really.
Yeah.
And these are songs that were written by two other members of the Cowsills, Billy, the oldest brother, and Barry, who unfortunately has passed away. But these songs are written for their own projects, and they're awesome, and they are performed amazingly well by Vicky and John. And you'll be very impressed. So on May 18th, we'll be very glad to have Vicky Peterson and John Cowsill with their new album, Long After the Fire.
Long After the Fire.
After the Fire. It's great stuff.
Yeah.
And then after that, the 27th, I will be in Liverpool doing IPO. So we will definitely have a show this will be opening night now that we moved it from Wednesday to Sunday. We will be there opening night. We'll do what we normally do. Maybe John Borak will join Mark, and I'll report live from Liverpool. You'll get to see some bands playing, interviews with bands who either had just played or are coming up. So that'll be a lot of fun. I
think you also need to do a little video on your phone of an update on what your brick looks like.
Oh yeah, there you go. Well, if I have the chance,
send me the file and we can play the update on the brick live.
You know what? I mean, I might be able to run out and show the
I would love to see you polishing the brick and just cleaning it up a little bit. That'd be great.
I really need to get my replica brick framed. It's actually sitting in the same spot it was when I brought it home. But I mean, obviously I can't wait to see the brick again. But the following Sunday will be the last day of IPO, but we may actually do a special show a couple of days earlier because again, and this is due to Mark telling me about a band called Twinklehead from Norway, and I contacted the main man of that band, and now Twinklehead will be playing IPO and Liverpool, so we'll get them on camera.
That'd be great.
And so even though Mark, you won't be able to make it, at least you'll be able to talk with Marcus? With Marcus and get to see some of their performance.
That'd be cool. That'd be very cool.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that. I think they're on the Saturday. No, I have to look at the schedule, but we'll definitely make that happen. And so because we have so many guests, we're already going to be into June. We haven't invited anybody else, but we're still working on stuff. I've made friends with certain people on Facebook who I definitely want to contact, and hopefully we'll get them on. I know Mark has been talking to some.
I'll tell you, I'm going to bring that up right now, just in case they happen to see it and I can guilt them into it. But I've been going back and forth for weeks, and I thought I was getting close, and in the end, this artist just doesn't want the publicity, just wants to leave it all be. But we got real close to having Peter Bram Tchaikovsky.
That would have been great, and hopefully it can still happen one way or the other.
You know me, I'm going to keep poking, and maybe they'll just say, just to shut him up, I'll do the show. But I mean, in his defense, he said, I just want to let it be. I hope you don't feel bad. I hope you're not upset. He's very nice about it. He didn't say like, screw you. It was just, I I just don't want to do that anymore. And
didn't our friend Cliff say the same thing? I
Yeah.
won't say his last name, but
yeah,
but
you never
he's the
know.
same way.
Yeah, but you know, I get it. I get it. I respect it.
Sure.
But man, yeah, that would have been another. That would have been another one. Bram Tchaikovsky would have
Well,
been.
let's
good.
not say would have, because you know
You never know.
As you said, you can be persistent when you want, and
That's right.
you know, maybe just kind of ease him into it, and he'll and because again, some of these people, and we find this out time and time again, to quote the Smithereens, but
Yeah.
we find this out a lot. A lot of these people, even with social media, don't realize just how loved they still are.
Yeah.
I mean, before social media, it was like, you mean people still remember us? And we're even talking about people who had, you know, top 10 hits. They have no idea. They think their time had passed. Well, it hadn't in the minds of a lot of people. And the same thing with a guy like Bram Tchaikovsky. I mean, people have those albums. They still love him. Girl of My Dreams is an iconic power pop song. Sorry, John Borak, but I think you would agree that that one is. And there you go. The complete recordings. Yep, I have that too. I love it. People do care, and people still do love them. And you know, Bram may just not realize that. I don't know how much he uses social media, but
well, no, not much, because he doesn't have a social media presence in any way, shape, or form.
So he may just not know, and
Yeah.
you know, maybe it just really needs to be impressed upon him.
You know,
Just how many
it took
people
me
love
about
him
a
this.
year to find a way to even get to him.
Wow.
I didn't know what his situation was, and there was a lot of sleuthing that went on.
I'll bet.
Not stalking, not anything weird. You have to kind of figure out, well, how can, you know? And I did. I
A
figured it
fine
out.
line, Mark. A fine
Yeah,
line.
fine line. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, thank God for the internet and social media. People, you know, are findable, and the ones who don't think we're stalking them are actually kind of happy about it. We certainly, you know, we've surprised a lot of people. We've gotten them on the show, and it's been a wonderful experience for them and us.
Indeed.
So, without social media, we would without the internet, we would never be able to find them.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. And tonight's episode 199. It was just another great one. So
A great way to end the hundreds. Yes.
they're all out there on archive, materialissues.com. So if you haven't subscribed out there on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe, pass it on to your friends, let everybody know. We'd appreciate it. And we will see you all again for our first Sunday
In
night
4
show.
days.
Sunday.
Yes.
Yeah, it's only
4 days. Remember, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain, 7 p.m. Central.
wherever the heck
That will
you're
be
at.
a new time for the most part.
Here's the promo. There's the promo, everybody. Sunday night. Hi, cool, Tim. Looking forward to seeing you there. Take
Thank
care,
you
my
so
friend.
much, and we want to thank you very much for, you know, not only watching each week, but, you know, sticking with us throughout the whole interviews. I mean, granted, our shows go long. They go longer than just about anybody else's. And you know, some people may not like that. You know, they're used to like 15-minute in and out interviews. But that's not how we do things. And for those of you who do appreciate a more in-depth interview and some song and playing of songs and stuff, you know, thank you so much. You get
sure.
what we're doing, and we really, really appreciate it.
Awesome. And we'll see everybody in a couple of days. Sunday for episode number 200. It's going to be a fun one. Hope you join us.
It sure will. So
Love
everyone,
to,
take care of yourself. Love to Ches and Audie, and Leah and Hannah. There you go. Thank you.
Indeed. Everybody, we'll see you Sunday. David,
4 days. Yes.
be happy, healthy, all that kind of stuff. It's all great.
Absolutely. Take care, everyone.